This is a panel about Tallinn Cities. And because we have a fairly small group in the audience, and because everyone knows everyone, it's going to be participatory. So whether you're on stage or in the audience, you're going to get to talk and ask questions and contribute. Okay. So that'll make everyone's voice heard. So before we start, and before I turn it over to the panel to begin, I want to say a couple of things, bless you, about Tallinn Cities.
There's one, bless you.
So my name is Gerri Burton, and my company is New Learning Ventures. And for us, the Tallinn Cities story started quite a long time ago. It actually started with Oracle UK as part of the smart city genre. We started looking at the changes in transportation, the changes in safety, changes in criminal justice, changes in healthcare. And we started looking at the fact that there wasn't a plan for a data-driven ecosystem that would connect individuals to opportunity and would connect education to employment. So there is no one in the audience that I need to say that the education to employment issue has gotten bigger since those days with Oracle. So then we started building it out, the concept, looking at the different ways that it would deploy, and in the meantime, I got to know Vista Unified. And Vista Unified was on a path for looking at innovative programs. It's a highly innovative district, as everyone here knows, and being highly engaged in personal learning. And that was a perfect path to start to look at Tallinn Cities, because while most of the country was looking at how do I do personal learning, all the principals in this room, Laura and Eric and Steve and Kim, were already doing it and already implementing it. And thanks to Matt's Personal Learning Challenge, 100% of those schools were engaged. So now the question became, where do you go from personal learning? Not how do you do it, but where does it take you? And one of the places it takes you is a redesign of the district, wider ecosystem, a different kind of joining in with society and employers and lifelong learning. So the difference between Tallinn Cities and many of the other World of Work programs that are out there, and there are a lot of them, is that Tallinn Cities comes from a place outside of education to bring education together with employment around an individual lifelong. It is not purely an education program. And in fact, as we'll get Phil to comment on soon, as talent readiness is changing and as the role of the employer is changing, it is the goal of Tallinn Cities to produce an ROI for employers. How do I manage talent better? How do I look at talent analytics? How do I deal with someone who has come from a proactive program like Tallinn Cities? So in the utopia of Tallinn Cities, the talent gap gets smaller, it gets narrower, the match is better, and you have a lifelong learner, someone who wants to learn and has a thirst to learn lifelong. So in the meantime, the Tallinn Cities story is growing. We've just signed an MOU with people in Saudi Arabia. We've signed an MOU in South Africa. And I can't start this program without introducing Bou Diarra, who's going to stand up for a minute, who came all the way here from Senegal to learn about Tallinn Cities.
Just for our panel?
Yes.
That's right. That's a lot of light.
I'm not surprised.
So looking, and if you read about West Africa and the 8 countries of West Africa, and in particularly the Ivory Coast, you will see an urgency about education to employment that literally jumps off the screen or the page at you. And I hope you all get a chance to talk to Boo for a few minutes, and he talks during this session. The issues are the same. The issues are exactly the same. And he has learned a lot about your schools. As I tell him, he needs to come and visit Vista. So, having said that, I'm going to turn over to the panel. And I'm going to start with Matt Doyle, who's going to tell us why Tallinn Cities, why this program, of all the programs that can be tested, why this one.
Right, thanks, Gerry. So our interest as a school district, we're in the northern part of San Diego County, and most of our students, over 60% of them, are at or below the poverty line. So our students don't often come to school with a mindset about the possibilities of their world of work when they graduate high school. So really our compelling purpose for pushing in the direction of innovation and making really close connections with businesses is to create opportunities for students that they don't even know that they have available to them. And when we meet with students, mostly middle and high school students, we meet with a lot of them every year, more than 2,000, the number one point of feedback they give us is that school doesn't feel particularly relevant for them. And so what we were trying to do is shift that mindset, that thinking for students, in particular in middle and high school, and create that sense of relevancy that ties directly to potential jobs in the future. Again, we're still promoting and supporting a college-going culture, but it's more than college. College is just another set of requirements to get to potential jobs. And for us, the key, the promise that we're trying to create is full employment upon graduation. Again, many of our students who go to college work when they're in college. Unfortunately, almost 80% of the kids who work when they're in college are not in a priority sector or the future of the growing employment in San Diego County, and in particular, those sectors that require high levels of skill and talent. So our focus on developing ready talent so that we can deliver on this promise of full employment right when they graduate in a career lattice work that leads to a priority sector where the jobs are going. So that's ultimately what our focus is.
So if Matt speaks from the relevance gap and that piece of students graduating into the workforce, Phil Blair can speak to us as the CEO of Manpower West about what that talent gap actually looks like and what happens when students aren't prepared and they become adults and they're trying to get jobs.
Yeah, if you don't know, the unemployment rate in San Diego is only 3.4, which a lot of economists feel that 5% is full employment. Right. So we need employees badly. Now, the 3.4 sounds great until you realize that for engineers and IT, it's 0.5%, and for opportunity youth, it's 14 or 18%. So it's always important to divide those numbers out and understand what we're dealing with. And the idea, the goal is to get the right hand, which is at 14 or 18%, into the 0.5% category. And there's a couple of things. One of my soapboxes, if anybody knows me, it's a soapbox, is soft skills or personal skills or essential skills. I don't care what we call it. That is number one when any employee, but especially a young person, approaches the HR department to look for a job. Because as a youth, I hire, and this is true across the board in our company, but it's more relevant for young people. We hire for attitude and we train for skills. That first job in high school or out of high school, because many of them need to work while in school, it's all around attitude. So I'm so supportive of schools who realize that and work on the soft skills. The handshake, the teamwork, the presenting in front of class, all those things that come out of the first 6 seconds when I meet somebody and I shake hands. I've made that decision as an employer whether I'm going to hire them or not. Then I give myself another 6 seconds to go, oh, Phil, you were wrong on this one, right? Or I was absolutely right. So it's so important that they teach those skills in school. Secondly, when I'm getting ready to teach them the skill needed for my job, they've got to want to learn. They've got to show me the excitement. They've got to show me what they learned was relevant to what I need. And my ongoing joke, Peter and I play racquetball, right? It's all geometry. You hit the ball here and here. And whenever I screw a shot up, I go, my geometry class, I should have paid more attention because I hit it there, that angle over here, over here. It's that sort of thing. Why am I studying geometry? Why am I studying this? Well, there's lots of relevancy, and you'll hear later, if business people don't get out from behind their desk and get into your classrooms, then we deserve to have a mismatch between your product and my hiring needs. So I think we both own this game to succeed.
So thank you, Phil. Tina, you were one of the first ones. Tina came to the very first Chamber of Commerce meeting with Brett Schatzenbach. Tina heard me talk about Tallinn Cities at drinks on the phone. Tina was one of the earliest players of Tallinn Cities. And you said something, which I'm going to ask you to repeat, which is that what you liked about it is it's proactive. Mm-hmm. It happens before the gap opens up. So if you could address that, that would be great.
So I've been studying the labor market or the job market in San Diego County for over about 6 years now. And in every single conversation, survey, interview, focus group with employers, they say those exact same things. The top main three things that come up is work ethic, right? So whether or not that person can actually show up on time, not cheat the system or whatever that might be. 2, the problem solving or critical thinking skills. And then the third one is basically just digital competency, but not just enough to be dangerous. They don't need to have all of that. So to be proactive, you basically have to have all those background skill sets, soft skills, hard skills, or maybe some technical skills before the employer hires you. And in the community college level, I feel like that was a missing piece in a lot of this, because we are finding a lot more employers who, while they say they want to have a 4-year or a bachelor's degree on that resume or on that job description, when they actually hire, they take work experience and past projects or portfolios more into consideration than the actual degree itself and certification. We tested this live. We had a live polling and asked employers, if you had 2 choices, all things equal, would you select somebody with a portfolio of work, or would you select somebody who had a degree or certificate? And a lot of it was related to the 87% of them said they wanted the person with a portfolio or work background. So that's what I mean by proactive. You don't even need to get that degree yet in order for you to look appealing in front of employers. And the community colleges now are starting to focus more on employment. I'm not sure if you're familiar with how community colleges were run in the past, but before, they got money if you got butts in a seat. If you enroll into a class, then they get money for it because it's a popular class. But if you dropped out or if you didn't finish your program, doesn't matter. So the incentive was often, it didn't lead to employment. Now the community colleges are accountable to employment outcomes. So they have to incorporate all these work ethic training programs and issues into their curriculum in order for them to actually get money now, right? Because if you don't train for somebody that will get employed, you're not going to get any more funds for your program. So I think it's a really good point right now, because in the past 6 years, we didn't have this connection. Industry wanting to be at the table, community college or public education wanting to partnering up with industry. We didn't have the incentive to, so why? And then now having all of the different K-12 and even workforce development programs at the table, we've come a long way. And I think now is the time for us to actually develop these talent cities.
So thank you, Tina. So Peter, you were talking to me a lot on the phone, even though I messed up the time zone for the phone call, about pushing programs like Talent Cities at a younger level. So we have community college. Right now, and Steve will speak to this, it's at the middle school level. And at the middle school level, it's fully inclusive. The idea is to engage everyone, because we know that the data coming back from Vista shows, there's Robert, my partner in crime in the data, shows that 90% of the kids learn about careers at home. School's way down the list. I talk to my parents, I talk to my friends, I talk to my aunt and uncle. I don't get to school till way down that list. So we know that if you're not talking to your parents at home, either at the end where they only like traditional careers, or my parents don't speak careers for any reason, then those kids are getting left out. So at middle school, Talent Cities is fully inclusive. Everyone should be involved. And that gets back to what Matt was saying about relevance. But Peter, you were saying to me earlier than middle school.
Right. First of all, I must recommend that you play racquetball or something like that with your board chair, because if you hit him as hard as possible, it's just an accident. You have to say you're sorry. So it's worked out really well.
I was
I'm sorry.
suspicious of
I
that
didn't
all
mean to
along.
hit it sideways. What Talent Cities has done and is doing for the workforce field is helping transform how we do our work. And it's the beginning of where we need to go, because traditionally in the workforce development, public workforce development sphere, if you're not too familiar with it, the Department of Labor funds it around the country, and it's primarily been for, and traditionally around the country, for adults and dislocated workers, 18 and over. So that's where we've been locally, regionally in recent years, and then through having Tina on our team for not long enough, and the great work that she did to be able to help share our priority sectors in creative ways and do it with the community colleges. Then we began to work more and more in the pre-18 years. So we really weren't doing that at all until we were working on that, Tina. And then that led to more things, sharing our priority sector work through the reports, through the conference that Tina kicked off 4 years ago, something like that.
Yeah,
and sharing our sector reports that led to the sector boards that are now in schools all over the county, which for the first time are really informing young learners around what is even out there. So we're getting ahead of the skills gap and the awareness gap by by informing youth, teachers, and parents around what's even out there. And then you can begin to inculcate what is needed in order to get these jobs. So we're still early in that work, and I think we've made a lot of progress in sharing the information, because I think that's been the big limitation in our work, is if we're just dealing with 18 plus, we're missing out on the opportunity to shape and form and inform at the right age. And so middle school is great, but we got to get into it very early, like Vista's doing, like in Cajon Valley, where it's really early. I have a fourth grader and an eighth grader, and my fourth grader, she needs to be knowing what's out there, what her strengths and interests and values are, and helping her really think early, and then that leads to this lifelong learning. But this work, Tallinn Cities, is really exciting for us because, again, it's going to help us as we need to continually reshape, reinvent what workforce development is. It's not for 18 plus. It's there as a core and it will always be. But if we can get in early and do more work up front, then we can get ahead of this issue of the opportunity youth of 41,000 youth in our community who are not working and not in school, 5.5 million around the country. If we keep doing the same old thing, it's the definition of insanity. So if we can change this and get ahead of it, then in the years to come, that terrible statistic of 41,000 local opportunity youth has got to dramatically go down. And I think we can do that through approaches like Tallinn Cities.
Thank you. So another conversation that was kind of interesting as we prepped for this was Steve Post kept preventing my dog from getting a treat.
Not on purpose. Not on purpose.
As our conversation went on. So we talked about the experience gap. And when students don't have the opportunity to have any experiences, whether they are internships, or they are experientships, or they are global talent bridges, like Boo and I are talking about to San Diego, they miss what it actually is to be at work and what the job of their dreams might actually be. And it turned out we knew some people who tried some jobs that they didn't like. So Steve, would you want to share your thoughts on that and what your students are feeling?
So first off, I did not know that your dog needed a treat, and if you had told me, I would have shortened the conversation. Secondly, as educators, we want what's best for our students, and we want them to go have success in their lives. And in order to do that, we want to make sure there's a good handoff between, the education and their careers. And of course, that's going to happen in different ways and at different times for our students. But we want to make sure that they have the skills and the experiences to know what they want, first off. There are students who leave our schools not knowing what they want, students who go through college not knowing what they want. And I saw one at a retail store, former student, and I said, "Hey, how you doing?" He says, "Great." And I said, "Okay, what are you up to?" Besides, this, obviously, he said, "Well, I'm going to school, but I don't know what I want to do." And he was a very bright student, very capable, and he's drifting because I don't think he had the experiences or the real challenges to say who he really wants to turn himself into. And so I think we have that duty to go beyond, STEM, which is going to be super important, of course, to talk about, all those STEM careers out there. Humanities, we have to go beyond all the arts and creativity, and we really need to talk about the people skills and the communication skills, the soft skills that are going to make them employable, and that is a subject area, if you will, that we need to bring into the schools. Mm-hmm. We need to give them real, actual experiences through, going to the world of work, Tallinn Cities field trips, meeting, talking, experiencing, and give them exposure to the vast quantity of jobs that are out there that they don't even know about. So I think that's one of our duties that we need to evolve into, because the world has changed, and the education to meet the needs of the student has to change too.
Thank you. There's a couple of points you made I want to pick up on. The first one is the notion of the student that was drifting. That is exactly the same notion that comes out in Phil's book, Job One, which I recently read. The notion of the adult that's drifting, and I'm switching jobs, or it's mid-career, I've lost my job. The duty of how do I know how to figure out what I want? I may not know what I want, but what's the process for figuring out what I want and testing that like a hypothesis? So I think there's absolutely that point that comes out of this whole story. The second point is that, again, Robert, I'm talking to the data, and please jump in, is that we're finding as we comb through all the data together, that no one really knows what's out there. We looked at high school students that had taken internships. 84% of them said they took internships, and 90% of those internships said they didn't know what the high priority sectors were. And how much more meaningful that would have been also had they been trained in the essential skills. We're finding that in middle school too. So the awareness issue of what the careers could be, or what the skills could be, and what the process is to get there is so important. But I also wanted to ask Eric to speak for a minute, because your students are going to Talent Cities as well from middle school. So what's your experience?
I think it's just a great opportunity to get them out into the world. I think one of the big things in general that we think about, Ed Modago always talks about a child can't aspire to a career that they don't know exists. And so I think the next level that I'm curious about with Talent Cities, and where people like you guys are smart can help us, is the jobs that don't yet exist, this whatever that we keep talking about is very nebulous, but how do we help prepare kids for that? So I enjoy hearing you talk about the soft skills, because as a school, I feel like that's all we really have to prepare kids with, is those soft skills for the nebulous future.
Yeah, and the flip of that, from the employer's point of view, I think if you go to a lot of employers, say, I'd like to bring 20 kids out to see what you do. Oh, there's nothing here. We just make plastic pipes, and what would we talk about, and what would I go to the class and talk about? And it's just like when you go into somebody else's world, it's fascinating when you're new to it. You know, how's that get made? What truck comes in the back door with what, and what machine? But part of that is meeting the managers of the department. Part of it is behavior on the bus to get there. Part of it is sitting and listening and paying attention. It just is full of soft skills training, but you're seeing what an adult world is like. And you may not want to make plastic pipes, but I love the idea of working with my hands and making a product. Well, that's a huge step, right? Because college isn't right for everybody. Community college isn't right for everybody. Hopefully we energize them and motivate them that they go to the steps, right? But if it's not, be excited about working with your hands and exposed to products that you can do it. So I think part of the work is getting business people to realize what they have is new and interesting when you're not doing it 50 hours a week.
Yeah.
And so we've got to sell that part. And that the learning part is going on the trip and asking questions and talking to adults they don't know and shaking hands and all those sort of things. So I think it's important we realize that as business people, we've got more to offer than we think we do.
Well,
Robert? Yeah.
I was going to chime in. Yesterday we took a group of students to Apple, which is not a tough trip to sell. Today we took a group of kids to a door and window business, and they were just as engaged and learned just as much going in there and talking with the people that were doing all of those different roles that they don't really understand. And one of the things that we often say is that when we take a group of students to a light bulb factory, they think everyone in the building is making light bulbs. They don't realize just the vast number of career opportunities that exist within every business.
Yeah.
And we've had some interesting experiences asking employers to do storytelling. How did you get to this job? Right? What did you do to get here? And that's been fascinating.
I was just going to jump in. I want to add on something that I think Phil said, and then Robert Kroll kind of is laying a little bit better foundation on. When you think of Talent Cities, I hear this all the time. People ask me, they think it's like a glorified field trip. So I want to make a connection because I think it's important to make this note. It's not a glorified field trip, and I'll explain why. So when we think of computers and we think of that catchphrase, Intel inside, so you want to buy the computer because there's intelligence inside. So think of Talent Cities as business inside. And so ultimately, field trips historically are field trips that are designed and facilitated by teachers, for teachers and for students. What we're trying to create with Talent Cities is a flipped kind of the script model where Talent Cities is created and facilitated by business leaders. And that business leaders are telling teachers and creating an environment for students to get a window into what business leaders want in their ready talent. It's a very different approach to an opportunity. And that opportunity isn't just the trip. It's the preparation for the trip where they learn about the priority sectors that Peter and his team have developed with Tina. and they learn about the essential skills. They actually have a poster of the essential skills, and we talk through those essential skills and begin to develop those essential skills. Then we do this thing that Robert Kroll's designed, which is kind of a pre-self-evaluation of where kids believe they are with regard to essential skills. And then after they go to a business like Phil's business, they do a post-self-evaluation of where they are, and most importantly, what are those essential skills after having had a conversation with Phil and others that they need to get better at. So I just want to make that distinction because it's real easy to draw the conclusion that Tallinn Cities is a field trip. Tallinn Cities is a way for educators to step out of the role of being the creator of the opportunity and facilitate that creation through the eyes of a business leader.
And I think that where Matt's leading, which was very well said, thank you, Matt, is that what Tallinn Cities ultimately produces, and back to where we started with the smart cities analogy, is the data. So that data presents a different discussion for a different kind of public-private partnership. That's why this panel is here. This is the public-private partnership behind Tallinn Cities. And as I think Boo heard me endlessly yesterday, right, say that if we don't have a public-private partnership, we can't have Tallinn Cities, right? It does, if all we have are the educators, that's a different program. If all we have are the employers, that's a different program. But in order to do this and have it grow over time into something that's meaningful, we need to have the solid public-private partnership. So I have a question for the panel. What makes a good public-private partnership? I mean, ultimately, we'll all have data and we'll all share in, but what makes a good one?
I'll take a shot at that. We are a public-private entity, largely publicly funded, Department of Labor, as I mentioned, and then we have city contracts, county contracts, but then we also get support from the private sector from Phil, our board chair, and a couple dozen other private sector companies who are investing in what we do so that we can then fund programs and deliver them, and then philanthropy. So we're kind of an amalgam of all that as one entity trying to do that. And when we're in sync, as I feel we are with really an excellent board model who are there in order to be able to be ambassadors for our work, to help guide, to know that we're producing really insistent upon good data, good outcomes, then it works. Then you're making progress. And then you can build upon that momentum like the work I talked about we did with Tina on our team and now collaboratively through community colleges, because the more we can work together to understand our region and then share that with the world, that's our responsibility. And we do that now, I think, better than we've done in maybe years or ever. Because if the education sector doesn't know what the priority sectors are, that's because if we're not telling them what they are and we're not doing that ongoing research and then sharing that in proactive ways. And then not only these 5 priority sectors that we identified, but I think what's really important too is that as much as the STEM careers and all of these fantabulous careers that we don't know exist will come into play in recent years, I think it's really important to be there for wherever each young adult is, because not everybody's going to be in STEM. It's not for everybody. And there's a lot of other great careers. So the more we can inform them of all these different career pathways, the trades, the hospitality sector, whatever it may be, and make that okay, that you don't have to be in STEM or STEAM. It's great, but we don't want people to feel like they're less than if they're not in these careers. And I think that's really important. I have my 2 daughters, as I've said many times. I think I have one STEM-related sort of daughter who kind of is wired and thinks that way, and the other not. And I don't want the one who's not STEM-oriented or interested to feel like she's going to be less than if she doesn't go down that path. And to help her and support her to find her place in the world and where she can really contribute.
Thank you. So
If I can just add on to that, the 3 pillars of the San Diego job market here are, and the economy, are the military, because if you've seen all the Navy ships out here, you know how important they are to us. The innovation economy, which is STEM related, and healthcare is huge to us also here. And if you talk to young people, to the points being made, well, I don't want to be an engineer, I don't want to be a scientist, and I don't want to be a doctor or a nurse. Well, that just wiped out 3 of the boards, right? Unless you think about a hospital as a company and as a manufacturer of health, and you get the students to think, well, I'm not sick. That's the only time, but that's when you go to a hospital, right? You go on a tour of a hospital and you see the billing department and the receptionist and the research department, and you could go on, and oh, by the way, there are doctors and nurses that run around here and save lives. But there's 80% of us that keep the industry going around doctors and nurses. And that's where the interest in healthcare is all at once. Oh my gosh, there's 100 career paths in healthcare, including pharma representatives and all that sort of industry. In engineering and STEM, Qualcomm, perfect STEM company, right? Scientists and engineers. 80% of their employees are engineers. But the other 8,000 are support people, and they're accountants, and they're finance, and they're economists, and all these other things. So we've got to broaden the sort of STEM and healthcare and not have people be so blinded by it and that they think doctor, nurse, scientist is nothing for me. Why should I pay attention to school? So we've got to broaden that out and know that there are hundreds of other career paths in healthcare that don't involve blood or giving shots, the two worst things kids want, right?
Exactly.
Shots, right? So they run away from healthcare thinking if I have to give a shot or get a shot, I don't want to do that thing. So I think that's where we need to open this whole career floodgate open of what the options are, because all it takes is getting excited about 2 or 3 of them, and then that relevancy that Matt brought, that this is why you need to, if you're going to play racquetball any time in your life, pay attention in geometry, right? I would have paid a lot of attention if I'd known that. But that's the important thing I think we need to do as educators and businesses, is get rid of the stereotype and these blinders and broaden that. Because people, you go into the billing department and people are excited talking about what they do and why they got into it and what their career path was. And it just opened a whole new door for somebody in healthcare that doesn't give shots. And I think that's what we need to do on both of our sides, need to do more of.
I want to go back to your question about what makes good public-private partnerships. So as somebody who did a lot of business programs through research, 2 things, communication and customer service. So for the communication aspect of it, I use my research to basically assess where employers are at. So if you look at the San Diego job market or the employers in San Diego, you'll see about 95% of them have less than 50 employees. And 60% of those, 60% of all companies have less than 5. So when you're interviewing employers and you're assessing their needs, they want to work with the education system and they want to be there and involved, but they don't want to be bombarded by the same 5 to 10 institutions or organizations. So in the communication piece, you want to know what their bandwidth is and exactly what can they do. Can they just answer some research questions and give us data? Great, low touch points. Maybe they can show up at some advisory group meetings and provide us feedback on our curriculum. Great, now we start tracking what type of involvement employers are interested in and what they can do. So that's the first part, right, the communication. And we use our research to communicate a lot with employers. The second part is the customer service. So once you got them and they're willing to work with you and partner with you and go into a contract with you, for example, then you have to provide as much customer service as possible. If you're a small company, you are doing so many things. I worked in the startup world before entering workforce and education. I was HR, accounting. I did social media. I don't have an HR background, so that's a little iffy.
All on the same day, right?
All on the same day.
And receptionist and billing clerk and
Exactly.
accounting head.
And the company I worked for was a defense contractor that spun off and commercialized their technologies. So you have this one company with a core technology that now has 5 different smaller companies. So of course you can imagine the roles that I had to split up. So if education is coming to me and saying, hey, do you want to work with us? Do you want to hire from us? Sure, but not right now, but I still want to be in contact with you. So if the education provider or the organization would ping me and say, hey, how are things going? We want to check in with you and see how things are going. That's customer service. And that's what I think that the public sector doesn't do enough of, is that tracking and providing the customer service for the private sector.
If I could add
Peter,
just one thing to add. Tina hit on a really important point, the second point, both, but the second point around customer service also translated into how hard it is to work with the public sector sometimes because of the regulations being federally funded. And we experienced it every day, and it can be a lot of red tape and real difficult. And Phil knows, as a private sector company wanting to do a job order, and if we can't be responsive to him and fulfill his labor needs, then we fail. And so we work really hard in our mixed system in order to break down the bureaucracy that can get in the way of doing this work effectively. We work at it every day, and we have a ways to go. We've come a long way, but if we can't be nimble and we can't support the business community in a way that we're a value add, then we won't be around, and that's maybe the highest priority we have.
So I want to ask a question to Steve, but also to Laura and to Kim, because they're representing our elementary schools. What does this program look like? And we talked about this a little bit, Steve and Kim and Laura. What does it look like if we bring it down younger than middle school?
One of the tools that is useful is Thrively, because in elementary school, third, fourth, and fifth grade students take a survey which will show them their strengths, their interests, their values, and career suggestions for them to start to look at. But the issue is, this morning I was speaking with some fourth grade teachers. They thought that part of it was going over the kids' heads because they were trying to do a passion project, so they couldn't understand it.
Right.
So they're trying to create something, they're saying for K1 and 2 students, which probably will really work better for the 3, 4, and 5 students to understand. They're just starting to tap into what interests them, what they want to learn, or what's important in the world. That's harder because they're still so egocentric, really little, and lots of them think they're going to grow up and be a Padre baseball star.
What is Thrively?
It's a, how do you describe it? It's a platform. It's
Okay.
kind of
Like Strong or Strength
Yeah.
Finder?
Yeah.
Okay.
Similar.
Yeah.
for younger kids.
Similar.
We use that too. In the middle school, we are having all of our 8th graders go on a Tallinn Cities experience to go out to the world of work and to go to different businesses. We've been to a few in the past month or two, and we've got a few more right on deck. And Robert's really helping a lot with that to get a diverse set of experiences. And in our school, we have an 8th grade community project where the students select an area of need in their community, and they select what they are interested in. And then we match them based on what we think would be a good match for the world of work to see if you're interested in this and you want to make a difference, here's what it might look like as a career. Here's what it might look like, down the road. And it could be an experience for them to say, whoa, I didn't realize that it was so diverse this way. Or it could be an experience and they say, maybe not. And either way, completely valid, because that's going to help them to pick their path and help them to not only open their eyes to the opportunities, but to narrow down what really suits them. So using their strengths is going to be a key piece.
And at this age, and again, back to the data that we've been receiving, you can see how they'll go from a very narrow thinking about what their future might be, i.e. my mom said, right, to a whole range of careers that they can envision and enjoy and potentially go after. I want to stop for a minute and see if there's any questions. Sure.
Maybe not being as familiar with Tallinn Cities, could you just sort of outline what are the main elements of the program? And then,
Sure.
In particular, what do you find to be the most effective?
Sure. So Tallinn Cities started as a public-private partnership meeting, which the Chamber of Commerce in Vista hosted. And that is always the way that we see it. That is a coming together of this panel, right? Then there are a series of activities that students, here we're talking about 8th graders, will go through. So there are assessments. There's strengths, interests, values assessments. There's explanations of what the essential skills are. The students do an amazing job of assessing their own strengths in those essential skills and how they might improve. There's an understanding of the high priority sectors, what they are. Finding out about your own region and what its future economy might look like and preparing research in that and understanding it. Learning where to look for that information, so kind of the learn-to-learn model, which I know is so important to you, Phil. Then in this model, students do take a trip to visit local employers. When they get to those employers, those are designed days where employers are asked to walk through students from the beginning of the process to the end of the process. And at each stop, the employees are asked to describe their career path, storytelling. Students are asked to solve miniature problems. Now, in the broader version of the design, An app will manage a lot of this, and a lot of the information will be virtual, so that students can experience more than one company, so that it is scaled across a nation, so that students that don't live near a company can visit that company, and then all of that data aggregates. The data is then anonymized, very carefully anonymized, and it is shared. And it is shared with the public-private partnership, so that government and employees, and particularly places like San Diego Workforce Partnership, can get involved and say, look at the roadblocks that we're looking at.
What data is collected, actually?
Excuse
What
me?
data is collected precisely?
Is the data collected? I'm sorry.
What is it? What data?
The data, so data of what kind of career were you thinking of versus after you go, what kind of career are you thinking of now? What subject areas are you interested in? What essential skills do you have? And how have you grown in those essential skills?
I'll give you a great example of that. So we did a number of them last year with students in middle school, and we do this pre-learning with the essential skills, soft skills, right? So ability to think creatively, ability to greeting people, ability to have executive functioning, those types of things. And we learned in our district that when students came back, the number one area that they had identified after having had the visits, and this is with multiple businesses, was that they need to focus more on their creative thinking. And that was an element that they had never thought would be a skill that they would need when they went into the workforce. That's a really good tangible example of, wow, I didn't even think that they would draw that conclusion without anyone helping them. So that's an example of it.
And this is, you said, 8th grade?
Yes,
Well, it's 6th, 7th, and 8th.
fifth grade.
Let me give you a great example, Matt. I own franchise and Manpower staffing, and so we hire thousands and thousands of people a year. And when classes come in, but last week we had a group of foster children that were either aged out or getting ready to age out. And it's human resources, right? It's hiring people all day. And I went over and the exercise was they went to one of our recruiters and took a job order, skill sets that the customer wanted, and then the recruiter pulled out 3 resumes that she was considering for that job to hire, to put on those jobs. And stopped and had the students read the job description and the applications, the resumes, and each one had to decide which of the 3 they would have picked for that job. But most importantly, why? So it was a wonderful exercise in thinking through the process. Right. What did the customer mean? Reading through it many times, as we know, and then picking the match. And it was a fascinating exercise because then they got into, yeah, but I don't think that's enough strength over there. I think they needed more experience here. So it was a typical experience in our company, but there were a lot of layers to that that was very interesting. You know, when you walk away and go, dang, I'm proud of my team. I didn't know we did that. But those are the sort of hands-on things instead of hands in your pocket, don't touch anything. So I always encourage an employer, let them do something, you know. Run the machine. If it's nothing else than putting your foot on the pedal and hitting the button or something, or taping the box, but do it. Don't just stand and watch it. Right. And I think that's really important. And to show the skill sets that it takes, because half the students said, I don't know, I can't decide, they all look alike to me. Well, there's a learning experience for the teacher right there that they couldn't even get far enough to make a decision on one or the other, which is the worst decision in the world, is to do nothing. So I think that's really important from both of our sides, that we look for those opportunities.
You know, another, like a call to action, if I were to leave the group with a thought just from the district office level, our teachers are fantastic, but it doesn't take long in the education profession to be irrelevant in the eyes of where business and jobs are going. And so how do we shift this dialogue about teachers learning from employers rather than teachers preparing kids to send to employers? So it's that kind of reverse perspective of how can we ensure that our teachers continue to be flexible, nimble thinkers as they work with kids to prepare for, you know, we all know, very complex future of work.
There's also one more point as we're kind of getting down to the end of the hour here, and we'll keep talking, but I don't want to lose this point. Kiki's doing something very interesting vis-a-vis Tallinn Cities with parents. Kiki, can I impose on you too?
Sure.
You have no other choice, really. We're all looking at you.
So I lead family and community engagement for the school district, and that's a component that as educators, we've historically failed to tap into is family at home. And yet, from the time they're as little as can be, we send them home with all these tasks to do at home. So we've given parents homework without them knowing. Go home and, make sure your parents help you finish this. And so with Talent Cities, it's, and family engagement, just overall, it's important to bridge those worlds so that school and learning doesn't stop at 3 p.m. That students aren't in their minds thinking, well, there's home, and then there's school, and then there's community. So I'm living in 3 different worlds. And so with Talent Cities, Robert and I are collaborating more so that parents also understand what their students are doing. Because what will happen is they'll go home, how was your day? Fine. What did you do? We went on this field trip. And they won't expand because students also make the assumption that parents won't understand. So I don't even educate you on the experience I had. So as a parent, how do you continue to support and enhance that learning if you don't understand what the child did? If you think, oh, they just went on a field trip to Disneyland, and it's not that, as Matt said, it's not a field trip. It's understanding their career options. And for parents to support that, they need to understand the direction of the world of work, and so that responsibility is on us. And so that's what this is doing, and what our team is doing, family engagement. There's 23 of us in the school district who work directly with families, and so Robert and I are collaborating to ensure parents have that experience. And the moonshot right now is to provide parents with the opportunity to have the same experience, Talent Cities for Parents, so that they see what their child sees. Because once they see, those conversations at home get transformed. And now it's a whole other level of being. So it's really exciting to make sure that we're working in collaboration.
Thanks, Kiki. So I threatened to ask Boo to speak, and I'm going to do it, because Nicole is always asking me about global collaboration. So the first question that I want to ask Boo is, does everything resonate? I always come back from my trips and say, it's all the same. Everybody's got the same issues. So would you agree with that, with what you're listening to?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I've been in touch with Gerry last month. And Africa has, I think, one big opportunity and a big challenge. The opportunity is, it's actually 1.2 billion people. In 2050, it will be 2.5 billion people. And 60% will be under 90.
So the youth is in Africa, 60% of the country is the youth.
Yeah, and so the challenge is education and employment. So when you're talking about the talent city, that's I think the right place is really Africa. What's happening actually in Senegal, in Ivory Coast, because I'm based in West Africa. We have 8 countries sharing the same economy, the same currency, and the same policies. As you said, I think that's it's not easy to bring the public sector to the table because regulations, and it's not easy. But I think the public-private partnership in the Tallinn Cities, especially in West Africa, that's really the big opportunity. And I think Gerry and I are working on this. So yeah, that's really the same in everywhere. And I think the situation is worse in our region. We soon start doing the assessment and see how we can
How we go.
implement this in the region with the 2 governments.
And then, thank you, Boo, and then take those opportunities and pull them together with schools here, giving students not only global awareness, but the global world of work experiences that most of them will participate in. So, Matt Doyle, final thoughts, 1 minute, 58 seconds.
Well, I'll let the other folks on the panel, I
Don't
gave you.
waste a second.
Yeah, I gave you my call to action. The idea is reverse the thinking, bring businesses and embrace what businesses believe need to happen, and teachers can use their skills to make opportunities for students. So I'll stop there because the other panelists, I'm sure, have some thoughts.
Steve, what's your final thoughts?
Yeah, the challenge for everybody is to keep going on this, push it further with internships. You know, like, let's be active. Like you said, we're not going to be passive and go and watch and have a field trip, but we need to push further to internships. An internship I had in college helped me to find my career path into education. It was not an internship in education, it was in science, which I thought was where I was going, but then I realized that was not exactly for me. And that is why I'm here today, and that is why I am happy, and I want every student to have that moment that I had to realize where I truly wanted to be.
Peter?
Got to be willing to say yes and to collaborate and do new things. It'd be a lot easier when Matt put this to us to say, now our plate's full. It's really kind of outside our scope. That, you know, good luck to you. We want to take it on, and with that spirit, you can get a lot done.
Thank you for that.
Phil?
Well, PK on Steve's thing, when you do interns and when you do site visits, it's as important to learn what you don't want to do
Exactly.
as it is what you do want to do.
That's right.
Right? Gosh, I think I love building, you know, things, go to a manufacturing thing. Ooh, standing all day with the machine. Ooh, maybe I'm going to study harder over here a little bit, or vice versa. This looks boring as heck to me. I want to be out on the plant where they're making things and machines are doing stuff. So that's as important. I'm on the advisory committee for this because I think it's important for business people to be part of the solution here, right? As I said, we're going to hire your product.
That's right.
So,
And if we don't tell you what our need is, you're not going to know how to produce it. So that's why I'm involved, and I think that's why this collaboration is so important. If education is here and career is here, they can't start and stop. They've got to weave together, and I think that's what this is about.
so I have to stop this red sign. I was going to give Tina the final word.
Well, I was going to talk more about how employers need to be physically involved there. In the community college system, when you look at career education programs, you have to have an industry expert leading those courses. So when you're talking about teachers learning from the industry and businesses, have them be industry experts before you can actually get the students involved with that industry.
Thank you, panel. Thank you, audience. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. I appreciate it.